It's a quick turnaround in F1 fantasy as we head from the streets of Baku to the bright lights of Singapore. So, who do we need to buy, sell, and hold heading to Southeast Asia? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Wednesday, September 18th. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, we're going to go over who to buy, sell, and hold in F1 Fantasy ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix. I did an Azerbaijan race review yesterday, so if you want to go check that out, just see what we were talking about coming out of Baku, that would be great. Any likes and subscribe, comments on the video, just let me know. But we're going to get into it today with buy, sell, hold, green flag, yellow flag, red flag, as I like to call it on the F1 Fantasy Pole Position channel. With a quick announcement, deadline live stream this Saturday. They are back. They are hopefully going to be back for a lot of the races for the remainder of the season, as we have the back end of this doubleheader, and then we've got a weird long break and then pretty much back-to-back triple headers to end the season. So lots of content coming out of the F1 Fantasy Pole Position YouTube channel. So if you like and subscribe to the channel, you will not miss a video. And I always tweet them out on X at my account F1UNFPL. So go follow me on there and let's talk some F1 fantasy. But what are we going to do without a report card to look back at last week's kind of buy, sell, hold? I had Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, Kevin Magnussen, and Yuki Tsunoda, and it was a bit of a disaster class. I'm not going to lie. Perez, I gave him the red flag. Results-based, it could be an A, but he was pretty much on for a podium, so I gave myself a C there. Minus 2 points, went down 0.5 in cash. Sainz, I gave a yellow flag because I was a little bit worried about him there. And negative 4 points there, and negative 0.5 million in price. I gave myself a C again. Lance Stroll, I was like, if you want to build some budget, you can go there. And that didn't work out either. C grade for him just because it was a DNF more than anything. It wasn't a poor performance, although he wasn't really having a spectacular weekend before that. And then Kevin Magnussen, sell him, red flag, because he was inactive for that race. And it came out after I recorded that video that they were going to institute like or install a negative 25 race penalty points for having an inactive driver in your lineup. So gave myself an A there. And then Yuki Tsunoda, I gave myself an F because I recommended buying him, and he had a negative 19, 0.2 million down in price, and just kind of a disastrous weekend for him and the entire V-Carb team in general. But we're going to move right past that. Some not so good grades coming out of Azerbaijan, but let's move ahead to who are we going to buy, sell, and hold in Singapore, and start with Oscar Piastri, the race winner from Azerbaijan. He's now won 2 races this year, but he's also now a A-tier driver, so he will rise at the same increments as Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, McLaren, Red Bull, and now also Charles Leclerc, who is also a tier A driver. Piastri is the 3rd highest scoring driver in F1 Fantasy over the last 3 races, trailing Norris at 43.3 and Charles Leclerc at 33.3. But yeah, he's been going up in price, points per million. He's been better in value recently. On the season, he's at 24.6 points. But yeah, like over the last 3 races, 32 points. The Papaya rules did not really come into play, or the support for Lando did not really come into play on Sunday in Baku, as Lando qualified or was knocked out in Q1. So there wasn't really a moment where we kind of saw Oscar supporting Lando. So, but I think in general, with 7 races remaining in the championship race for Lando to hunt down Max, as McLaren is now ahead in the Constructors' Championship, I think it is going to be a little bit more like you need to support Lando if he is around you or near you. And I don't expect Lando to go out in Q1 every week. I expect McLaren to do quite well in Singapore, actually very well in Singapore. If you can get to triple McLaren, which we are going to get to later in the episode with one of the guys I'm recommending to hold or sell kind of this week. Triple McLaren seems like it will be a very strong lineup this week. So while Piastri is going up in price, I still think he's a green flag because he's a pretty good asset in general, and it's close. I would buy him if you don't have him. If you do have him, I would hold him as well. I definitely don't think he's a sell. It seems close enough between McLaren that Singapore is just such a tough track to overtake. So, like, maybe we'll see what happens. But I still recommend buying Oscar Piastri ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix just because his form is bang up. He's a little bit cheaper than Lando. So, if that helps you kind of maybe bring in a Ferrari over a Mercedes this weekend, or maybe go from like Carlos to Charles Leclerc, like that could help as well. So, just to kind of facilitate some options there, I would recommend buying Oscar Piastri. Moving over here to Lewis Hamilton, 24.8 million. He is the highest B tier driver that we have got in the game right now. Over the last 3 races, he's scoring 21.7 points. He's worth 0.9 million, and he's only risen 0.7 in price, which hasn't been too bad. However, over the last 5 races, he's only finished in the top 3 scorers once. That's when he won. And he's actually losing 3-1-1 to George Russell in the last 5 races where both Mercedes drivers have finished. George has had a couple of DNFs in the last 7 races, so I kind of threw those out. Maybe it's a little loosey-goosey math, but it does feel like Mercedes is starting to favor George Russell. There were some comments coming out after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I'm sure, taken out of context, all the team radios sound a lot worse than they probably were. Lewis was probably just frustrated that the car didn't really thrive like he was hoping it would with a new engine that they took in Baku. So they've now got another engine in the pool for allocations. And yeah, just winding down, I'm not sure if Lewis is really worth that extra money over George. And this is like another situation where if that can get you from, if going down from Lewis to George can get you from like Sainz to Piastri or Leclerc or something like that, I would definitely kind of get rid of Lewis Hamilton. And that's why he is getting the red flag for me ahead of Singapore. Strong race last year in Singapore, so, and he's had a pretty good record around here, but I'm just not feeling Lewis Hamilton heading into Southeast Asia this week in F1 Fantasy, so he gets the red flag for me. Next up is Ferrari. The first time I've actually put a constructor on here, which was pretty eye-opening when I was putting this together. So I will maybe put more constructors in here going forward. Let me know in the comments below what you think about that. 24.4 million right now on the season. They've scored 55.2 points per race. And then over the last 3, it slightly dipped with a 52.6, but you can imagine that that would actually be a lot higher if Carlos's crash with Sergio Perez did not happen on Sunday afternoon. Points per million, they're at 2.5 on the season, which is actually the best value in the game for constructors. And they've risen 0.7 in price over the last 3 races as well. And while Lewis Hamilton has a pretty good record in Singapore historically, recently it's kind of been the Ferrari show in Singapore. With in 2019, 2022, and 2023, Ferrari finished on pole. In 2019, they finished first and second. In 2022, they finished second and third behind Sergio Perez. And in 2023, they got first and fourth. Possibly could have been better. Charles Leclerc was kind of asked to sacrifice his race a little bit because Carlos Sainz got pole on Saturday. So they kind of were like, well, let's just get Carlos the win here. Let's get a Ferrari win on the board for 2023. So it could have been a little bit better for Charles Leclerc, maybe if he had just looked out for himself a little bit more last year. But overall, Ferrari really strong in Singapore. The upgrades they brought to Monza seem to be translating quite well to Baku and then hopefully Singapore as well. F1 Big Data on X had as similar circuits that we'll go over tomorrow in the Grand Prix review or preview and team selection video that I'll put out tomorrow, which you don't have to miss if you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So greatly appreciate any support there. But yeah, in general, I think Ferrari is a big priority transfer for a lot of managers this week. I know a lot of engaged managers already have Ferrari. However, maybe if you're not there yet, yeah, Ferrari is going to be one of the 2 constructors that I have in all of my teams this weekend. So they get the green flag in F1 Fantasy. Moving over here to Kevin Magnussen, who is, I have no idea what price he is because Ollie Behrman took his spot last week and came in at 15 million, where he was at Saudi Arabia, or after Saudi Arabia, he was 15 million. Then the game refreshed and finalized, and he went down 1.7 in price, which I guess if Kevin Magnussen got his score, he would have gone up to 13.3. So for the last 3 races, I kind of haven't calculated all of that, but on points per race for the season, Kevin Magnussen 6.5 points per race. He's returning after his race ban. He's had 6 straight 0.5 million rises. I'm really curious what happens when the game refreshes or kind of puts him back in what happens to his price. So I don't really know where we're going to go with Kevin Magnussen. However, he's finished 10th and 12th at the last 2 Singapore Grand Prix and seems to just in general have a pretty good feel for the track around here. Driving really well, always seems to just kind of like skirt right above that budget price or budget price rise line every week in F1 Fantasy. So he's also a fantastic asset if you're still looking to build budget going into the final third of the 2024 season. So for that reason, Kevin Magnussen gets a green flag. Pretty much set and forget at this point. We'll see if anything interesting pops up with the price. Like, did he go up 13? Like, did he go up 0.5 even though he went down? I don't know. He scored negative 25 points if you had him as an inactive driver. So very strange going on in F1 Fantasy. Final driver here is Alexander Albon, 9 million on the season, 1.7 points, but recently 5.3 as Williams has had a quick uptick in form thanks to the Monza upgrades that they brought and just a strong race in Baku as well. Helped out a little bit by the Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez crash there. 0.95 points per million over the last 3 races as well. But in Baku, he actually scored 10 plus points for the first time since Austria, and it was his first price rise for the first time since the British Grand Prix. And while it's been a good upturn in form for Williams in general, there is still a 1.7 million difference between Albon and Zhou Guanyu, and a 1.8 million gap between him and Valtteri Bottas, or even more between him and Franco Colapinto. So I don't think Albon is scoring enough points for you to kind of justify having him in your squad if it prevents you getting to triple McLaren. I'm looking at my T1 squad here right now, and if I take George Russell and Alexander Albon out and I put in and I put in Zhou Guanyu, that gives me exactly 25.2 million in my squad to run triple McLaren this week or get Charles Leclerc next to Lando Norris as the 2 times driver. So that's where I'm at there, just because Albon scoring points is great, but 5 points a race, 10 points a race is probably big enough gap between Oscar and potentially Charles Leclerc over George Russell that it's worth just taking a hit for Zhou Guanyu. That would leave me running the triple basement lineup here with Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, and Franco Colapinto. So I wouldn't necessarily love that. However, if it's the only way that I can get to like a triple McLaren or double Ferrari, double McLaren lineup, I think it's probably worth it. So Alexander Albon, if I can click back onto my screen here, gets the yellow flag. He's not a priority sell, but I don't think you have to buy him, even though he's shown some good form recently. It's just one of those things where it's like, I don't think the value, the difference, the amount that you can go up in driver potential just from dropping down to Albon to one of those Sauber guys or even Franco Colapinto really means that I would sacrifice it. I'll take a 0.2 million hit in budget for a couple of points there, but potentially Oscar Piastri or Charles Leclerc could win on Sunday. Maybe not Oscar as much, especially if Lando is up there, but Charles Leclerc could definitely bag a win in Singapore. So going down from Albon to one of the Sauber guys or even his teammate Franco Colapinto to have enough budget to get up to one of the now tier A drivers in Piastri or Charles Leclerc is definitely worth it in F1 Fantasy. But that's going to do it for this short and sweet green flag, yellow flag, red flag episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. Hopefully you guys are taking a little bit of a breath ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix. There's going to be one more episode this week with the Grand Prix preview and team selection. And then there is a deadline live stream on Saturday. So we will all be kind of gathered around the YouTube screens to kind of figure out our lineups with 1 hour to go until the F1 Fantasy deadline. There's actually a ton of F1 Fantasy content out there. Rain has put out some videos on Rain Fantasy. Zach will put out a video, I'm sure. Pop Pan Man has already put out his video. Adam and Rob have already put out the fantasy formula. Rob's already put out a video by himself as well. So there's no shortage of F1 fantasy content during this doubleheader. So definitely go check out the rest of those guys as well, as they do fantastic work. And they're doing, especially Pop Pat Man, doing really well this season. It's been a tougher season than last year. And I think he's already inside the top 4K right now after a top 100 finish in 2023. So yeah, plenty of us kind of going around talking about F1 fantasy. So no shortage of content there. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, or if you're listening on the podcast side, and I will talk to you next time.